why is this conversation growing?
So I think, like just very realistically, the population is aging, and there are people, in their 50s that are getting concerned about mom or dad, or have had a
Mhm.
health situation of their own. We're trying to go upstream. We're trying to get to people before they have that serious illness, which, your book speaks to too. Like, don't wait for
Mhm.
it to be a crisis.
Mhm.
Um, and I really do
Yeah.
believe I saw a change
Mhm.
in the audiences after COVID, because like a lot of people didn't get to say goodbye.
Mm.
Yeah.
A lot of people experienced a sudden death that they hadn't thought was going to happen. So I think it's shook people up a bit.
Hi, I'm Xian Xiao.
And I'm Sammy Winemaker. Welcome to the Waiting Room Revolution. We are speaking to some incredible people this season who have done amazing things in their community. And today you're going to meet one of them.
Yeah, we're so excited to meet Sheli O'Connor. She is a returning podcast guest and the Director of Community Engagement and Partnership from Hospice Waterloo Region. Welcome, Sheli.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to learn from you as a community mobilizer, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and what you've learned. So let's just jump right in. What is it that you love about community development?
So I think my whole career I've focused on the general public, working with people in the community, and it's wide open. The key piece is, and we've talked about it before, is that really the healthcare system is overwhelmed, and we really need to work with the community to build their capacity to be part of this in terms of helping people who are seriously ill. So that's the newest way I'm looking at community engagement, or focusing on
Mhm.
community engagement. I've done things like I worked in older adult work for almost 20 years, and elder abuse was one of my focus areas, ageism. So we did all kinds of things with older adults and students, intergenerational stuff. We worked with video gamers. We did all kinds of things to try and engage various aspects to get people interested and feeling good about being part of something. So that's the part I like. And I feel like the ability to maintain that or sustain it is better. When I first worked with hospice, I led an ACP, an advanced care planning project, for 3 years. And we worked with healthcare, community professionals, estate planners, lawyers, that group, and the general public. And by far, we felt we made a bigger impact with the general public, building
Mhm.
their capacity, their confidence. It's not the hospital, the healthcare system has so many rules and so
Yeah.
many, it takes a long time to change things. And I think when you work with the public, you can see the change in their faces. You've seen it in your
Mhm.
presentations, like it's there, and there's an appetite. So that's what I love about community development. You meet new people, you learn new perspectives from people, you
Mhm.
tweak what you're doing because of the way they would like things done, and in the end, you come up with great products.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I never thought about the fact that it seems like there's less red tape when you're working with the community, right? There's
Yeah.
much more flexibility, and it's not as, I mean, I'm sure it has its frustrations, but it doesn't feel as frustrating as working with very structured organizations.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty hard to shift the protocols and policies at the hospital. Let me say that about
yeah.
advanced care planning.
I have a very basic question for some of our listeners. Can you tell us or define for us what is community development? Like if someone says they're like they do community development, how is that defined?
So I think the mistake that people make about community development is they think it's about taking education to the public. It's just
Mhm.
about doing PowerPoint presentations and
Mhm.
educating to them. So it's doing something to them. And with the community development stuff, it's really exploring with the community, what is it they need,
Mhm.
what would be helpful, and then working with them to create that. And you never know how that's going to work.
Mhm.
It's quite it's creative and it's fascinating, and but
Mhm.
it's all focused on working together. And so whether that's partnerships with businesses, or partnerships with service groups, or partnerships with the faith groups, everybody has a different lens on
Mhm.
whatever the topic is, and you learn so much just by sitting and listening and then working with them to create stuff.
And you don't have an endpoint in mind, and you try to get them there. It's like
Yeah.
really organic, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have expectations, you've been given, I'm supposed to go out and make sure these people all understand advanced care planning. But what I learn about is it the advanced care planning that's really of interest to them, or are there other things around having what's most important to them shared, or do they want to do it differently? And so that's the part I like. You never really end up where you thought you were going to end up.
You have to be open-minded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been doing this education role, community development role for so many years, especially around, death, dying, hospice, palliative care, these really
Yeah.
taboo topics. And so what has your experience been about trying to introduce these concepts early, even in people who maybe don't yet have an illness? Has that been challenging?
Um, it depends on the topic. We found with advanced care planning, and it really speaks to what you're doing. People feel threatened by the emotional stuff, and having to deal with things that they're afraid of, like death and dying. But they were open arms around advanced care planning, open arms to your book and to, the 7 keys, because it was practical. They could do something with that, and it gets you in the door. And that's what we found. And then they open up, even something like the substitute decision tree. It's a very practical tool, but then they start to tell their stories,
Mm.
and it clicks with them. And it's about taking them information that resonates with them. Yeah, there's lots of things I could go and talk to people about, but they may not care less. It's just another lunch hour presentation. So check that one off.
So you have to find the in that resonates with them.
Yeah.
Or your Trojan horse that you're going to ride in on
Exactly.
that is acceptable to them, but out pops another topic, like an adjacent topic maybe, but okay.
So when I used to try and talk about elder abuse, you can imagine how that goes over, or used to go over. And now the death and dying stuff, I've seen a shift with people. Maybe it's because the age group is older, the general population that we're working with. But since COVID, I've definitely seen a shift in people's interest and appetite for that information. They want to go beyond advanced care planning. It's still a very hot topic because it's very practical, but they want to know more. And that's where the illness journey, all of that stuff, what's it look like? What does dying look like? They're still a little bit reluctant, but you can get in the door now.
As you're speaking, I was just thinking, do you think we would get more traction if we ditched the death part and just talked about dying? Because people always say death and dying. First of all, dying comes first.
I know. I always wondered about that.
Before death. But also death is a moment in time. It's like, it's a blink. And the dying is the chapter that comes before it. And I don't know, like when I ask people, are they more worried about dying or the death? I would say majority of people say it's the dying that they're unaware of, like they don't know what that looks like. And death is death is death. Although there are some people who will say, I want to know what happens afterwards, So
the curiosity piece.
Yeah. But anyway, I digress.
No, and just in terms of thinking about that, I find people don't want to talk about death, but they will talk about the dying process.
That's what I'm
They are
saying.
curious about it. Yeah. I also find people are also more inclined to ask about grief. Like it seems to be people feel safer, maybe because grief is about their friend, having to support them. So that's okay. It's not quite touching them. We worked at Grand River Film Festival for about 3 years, and we ran a contest, and we invited artists to commit to develop short videos that we could use in presentations and things like that. And it was part of this big festival. Most of them picked grief as their topic area.
Wow. Well, what were the contenders? What were the contenders?
Contenders in terms of what did they provide?
No, but what were, like, if they picked grief, were there other options?
So we went death, dying, and grief.
Oh, and they picked grief. Okay.
And they picked grief. Yeah.
Interesting.
I love that idea of a film festival. You've
Yeah,
done so many different ideas. I'm just trying to, for our audience, like what are some of the other events or creative ideas that stand out in your mind of, I guess, maybe campaigns that you were like, oh, I remember that one. That was just a little different because you're
yeah,
right. These talks, if that's one way to do it, and of course,
yeah,
we do those all the time, but to engage the community, it seems like you have to come up with different ways, um,
yeah,
and work with
yeah.
artists and things like that. Do you have any other examples?
So we did with when I was doing the elder abuse work, we got high school students and seniors together to make a rap. And one
Oh,
of the
Ah,
kids was good at rapping, so we ended up doing a whole rap video. And you start out in a room with these different age groups, and they're split up. They stay on other
mhm.
sides of the rooms, and it's really beautiful at the end to see how they're hanging out together and got an arm on their shoulder. And like it really was neat. That was great. We worked
Can't
with
you give us a sample?
yeah. Or was it
no,
Come on,
recorded?
no,
Shelley.
I was. We had one of the high school students was the rapper, and we all learned the parts and
Okay.
supported him. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Now, if it was in the time of YouTube, it would be online. It would have gone viral
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a while ago, and we worked with uh, gaming students who were in the gaming program at Wilfrid Laurier, and they helped us create like an online game type thing with around how do you help somebody figure out their advanced care planning? This
Mhm.
and if you do this, then this happens. And if you do this, that happens. It was really, really neat. And the kids knew nothing about the topic.
Mhm.
And it was just fascinating to watch
Mm.
them walk away with that. So we've done those kind of things. We're just in the middle of working with a university out of Spain to create an escape room. They call
Oh,
it a stay room
Oh,
on palliative care. Um,
wow. Tell us
yes.
more about that.
that's cool.
Yeah, so um, we're hoping we're hoping to run it at the university in January, and it's really just 5 rooms and different topic areas. It's moving them through the system is basically from illness to
Mhm.
hospital waiting room to hospice at the end.
Mhm.
It's really neat. So got scripts and things hidden in the room, just like an escape room kind of thing. So we're hoping to get that off the ground in January. And
Oh,
my
wow.
hope is that we can transfer it from students to the general public at
Hmm.
some point.
That's
And
really
apparently
cool.
Waterloo Region is a big escape room community. So I didn't know that.
I've never
Wow.
been to one. Have you, Shelley?
Oh yeah. No, not that's this one, but yeah, because we did it as a staff because that's what you do in Waterloo.
Yeah.
You go to an escape room.
Cian, have you been to one?
I have. I
Yeah.
have. I'm an escape room fan. I've been to quite a
Junkie.
number. Yeah, well, I've been to quite a few. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
it's Jose Pereira that we're working with.
oh, of
Oh,
Dr.
course.
Pereira. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
amazing. I think it's a cool idea. It's because you're there for the puzzles, but you're learning of how people go through the process of, the system. I think that's
Yeah.
just it's a nice setting.
Sneaky. It's
Yeah.
very sneaky, Shelley.
Yeah.
So
Shelly, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I first started working on the community engagement for Hospice Waterloo, I came across a program, an organization called Reimagine. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
Hmm.
It was just an incredible experience. They are a group out of San Francisco, and they started there with like a week, or maybe they had 30 events, from comedians talking to book studies to presenters. Like it was just a wide variety, to candle making, all kinds of things to get people to open up conversation. And
Mm.
so I was really fascinated with that because it was all the general public being invited to come and hear all this stuff, and it was all over the
Mhm.
city. Montreal ran it, tried to run their own a few years ago for a week, and it
Mhm.
it was just as good. And it was just before
Mm.
COVID, and it's that kind of out of the box thinking about how you
Mhm.
engage people. I've always said that you got to do more than a PowerPoint. At some point, you got to go beyond the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Cian,
that
we have to sharpen our gig.
yeah. Well, I think
Oh,
we
it's
want
a
to
pretty
learn.
good gig. It's a
Yeah.
pretty good
Well,
gig.
guess what? Cian is a really good dancer. So I bet we could spice it up a bit. Seriously.
Yeah.
So Shelley, you've done all these things in the community for many, many years, trying to change the conversation. What would you say are the secrets of creating change? Mobilizing a community, or for one person, changing their mind or their attitudes or their behaviors. I mean, what messages and tactics work and what doesn't?
So I think you have to be prepared that it takes time.
Mhm.
It's not something that's going to happen overnight. If you're looking at a whole community piece, people have to feel like they are contributing something.
Mhm.
So again, back to they don't do it to them, work with them. Um, and like for advanced care planning, for instance, we do those presentations and, the whole idea is that you got this information and you're going to go away and talk to your families,
Mhm.
but it's a one-off and you might never see those people again. And, when we were doing the project, we would phone people 3 months later and say, did you have a chance to sit down with your
Mhm.
family? Oh, we're gonna like, and you have no, so it has to be something that keeps them engaged.
Mhm.
So it can't be, it's not something you do, it's not a one and done
Mhm.
kind of thing. So we did at the end of the advanced care planning project. So we did, I don't know, 1,200 different events during the project. And at the very end, we held a gala and we called it Know Now, as in KNOW now.
Mhm.
And we invited artists from the local community to be part of it. Like, so they came with some people. One woman had a shroud that she wanted to put up on display. Another young woman had painted a picture about her grandmother who had dementia and died. We had an art photographer do a whole series of photographs with people who had wanted to show what was most important to them. So they held up different objects.
Mhm.
We had a video thing. We had spoken word artists. I don't know if you know, they
Mhm.
get up and do these speeches. It was the most fascinating thing to watch the conversation that happened as a result
Mhm.
of that event. As again, we could do 100 advanced care planning 101
Mhm.
presentations. There was more conversation and more inspiration in that room
Mhm.
that evening than what we got from out of a 1 hour presentation. It was great.
You know what? You remind me of when Sian and I were your guests, and we were speaking at one event, and you had so brilliantly set up the foyer with round tables and chairs and coffee and tea and cookies or something like that,
Yeah.
knowing that after we did our presentation, that people would maybe want to sit and talk and, discuss the content. And they did.
Oh
I
yeah, it
was
was
so
amazing.
surprised. Like they lingered afterwards and sat at tables and that was so
Yeah.
smart.
So that was creating community. They all sat and talked
Yeah.
about it, and it. Now that was unique to have those tables like that and have people feel they could sit and not, in an auditorium where they have to leave right afterwards. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have to ask Shelley because you've been, doing these talks, building community. Like, what is it about our message? Because I mean, the broader umbrella is changing the conversation, getting people to plan ahead. We've contributed in our way with our Hope for the Best, Plan for the Rest book and podcast. I mean, is there something special maybe or different about what we're offering that really maybe sparks the conversation in a different way or maybe attracts people who maybe were reluctant before? Is it one of the keys or yeah, something that
I
excites you? Yeah.
We're asking you
well,
why you like our content.
okay, so
Yeah.
because we're on the same page, we both realize that it's the public that needs to know this stuff and to work. I mean, you never work in isolation. You still need to work with your healthcare team, which you make
Mhm.
that very clear. I think there's a couple things, and I look at the feedback you got from those events. Keep doing this. You're so
Mhm.
inspiring. I never knew I needed to know this. It was really incredible positive feedback.
Mhm.
But I think you gave them something they didn't have. I think that, you probably know lots of people. I know lots of people who think that if they go through those doors in the emergency department, everything will be taken care of.
Yeah.
And then they fall like, what? You mean what? I have to do this myself. I have to advocate for myself.
Mhm.
So there's enough people who've had that experience now that are going, I don't know what to do. You
Mhm.
told them what to do.
Mhm.
You gave them that guideline and it's practical. So you're not asking them to dig deep into their, emotional stuff to come up with
Mhm.
answers. Although there is some of that, but it's all by far practical and it's
Mhm.
being delivered by two people who know the system.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
always found in my work, you have to have the credible people
Mhm.
making the presentations or you're not going to get the people to be there and they feel better walking out knowing this came from you guys.
Mhm.
But for sure,
Yeah.
the practical, the way you work through the 7 keys, I think you broke it down into pieces for people so they
Mhm.
weren't overwhelmed, by having to do this, and you were very honest about how the system works. And yeah,
Mhm.
especially, and I don't know if I can talk about your workbook, but you go into a lot of detail about, okay, so the doctor doesn't have time for you. Well, here's a few ways you could pose the question.
Mhm.
People do not know how to
Yeah.
talk to the healthcare system. They just really do not know. And
Mhm.
we talk about it with death and dying and grief stuff, is that it's reluctant. Dr. Mannix talks about how the system has been or the whole process has been kidnapped by the healthcare system, so nobody knows anything anymore.
Mhm.
You're giving that back to people and
Mhm.
giving it to them in a way that they can feel confident. Okay, this isn't so hard. Okay, this is broken into small pieces for me. I can figure this out.
Mhm.
I had a volunteer at hospice who became an inner crew for a friend.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so it was right about the time that you were doing your presentations. And it was amazing to watch how they all came around their friend who was dying. And
Mhm.
you could, yep, check, yep, through your list of your 7 keys.
Mhm.
It works. It's beautiful. And that volunteer sings your praises everywhere because
Oh.
it's exactly what they needed to do. Somebody
Mhm.
took on the record keeping, somebody took on be a go accompanying the person to appointments. It was like just
Mhm.
huge, but could have been
Mhm.
right in your book.
Well, you know what? It's people like that did write our book, really, because it's the
Yeah.
snippets that we saw along the way, in our combined careers. We would sit back and say, or I would be in a home and I would say, this is really working well. So, what are the ingredients here that I'm in a
Yeah.
home where everyone is calm despite what's going on and they're working together? And so it is all the people that we have researched or interfaced with or cared for that have written the content, really.
It's kind
So,
of like community engagement. You're
oh,
getting your expertise from the people that you've been engaged with, right? So that's
can
yeah,
I put that on my CV?
yes.
Yeah.
That event that we attended and participated in, the Dying to Know weekend, it's happening again in your region. You're organizing it. It's going to be great.
Mhm.
I'm just curious, like, who are the people who come to this kind of event? Because
Mhm.
we had always thought that it's only once people get ill that they would really start to face the system.
To perk up.
Yeah,
Yeah, to
yeah,
perk up. But I'm getting the sense from your conversations that it's a very wide variety of people who might
it
come. And
is.
so,
Mhm.
what's your insight into who attends and why is this conversation growing?
So I think, like just very realistically, the population is aging, and there are people, in their 50s that are getting concerned about mom or dad, or have had a
Mhm.
health situation of their own. What I'm most thrilled about with the Dying to Know, which we did get permission to use the name, it is coming out of Australia, one of their
Mhm.
projects, that I forget what I was going to say about that. They're experiencing it more. They've seen other people, and they're not the healthcare people.
Mhm.
That's what I was most surprised about. I thought they would be, we always get people who are professionals at a lot of
Mm,
our stuff, but these ones have been primarily the public. So that's exciting. And I think we're trying to go upstream. We're trying to get to people before they have that serious illness, which, your book speaks to too. Like, don't wait for it
Mhm.
to be a crisis.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I really do
Yeah.
believe I saw a change
Mhm.
in, the audiences after COVID, because like a lot of people didn't get to say goodbye.
mm,
Yeah.
A lot of people experienced a sudden death that they hadn't thought was going to happen. So I think it's shook people up a bit.
I
yeah.
think also with COVID, that the care more than ever rested on the shoulders of people's, in quotation, family, chosen family,
Yeah.
or inner crew, because no one they feared taking their loved one to an institution, or they were
Yeah.
bringing their loved one out of an institution, like a long-term care or nursing home, because they wanted to protect them at home. But it resulted
Yeah.
in more caregiving coming from the family. And also, I think it was difficult for families to get in touch with healthcare providers, so they actually had to learn how to self-manage more than ever. And so coming out of COVID, there's like this thirst for we have to know more than we know to be able to pull this off. And we
Yeah.
cannot wait for the professionals to just be there all the time. So I feel like people are primed and understand that you just cannot be, for lack of better words and respectfully, like passive in these interactions,
Yeah.
or you're
Hmm.
scuppered.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the generation that's moving into this age group is the generation who was pretty independent, and being
Yeah.
independent and in control is a big deal. Whereas
Yeah.
other generations, not so much. But this one for sure, that especially the ones who are retiring, who have,
Mm-hmm.
the 80-year-old parents,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
they're concerned.
Yeah.
We've tried to do some work in some of the businesses, lunch and learns for
Mm-hmm.
people, and that's who you get. You get the 40 to 60-year-old who's it's really about their parents
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
that they're
Yeah.
Hmm.
concerned about.
Yeah. You mentioned uh, how it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't healthcare providers, but they're a very important audience. And we did an event with you for a room full
Yeah.
of healthcare providers. I'd love to know what what is your comment about healthcare providers? They need to know this. Is there a barrier there? And what does it take to change their minds and get them to realize that, well, what is it that they're realizing and what changes their behavior?
I think if we could get them to shift to seeing that the person is at the center of this, get
Mm-hmm.
back to that instead of
Mm-hmm.
I know best, so this is
Mm-hmm.
what we're going to do. That we've got to move away from that. And I think things like your book and your workbook will give people the confidence to say, well, wait a minute, this is what you need to know about me.
Yeah.
And this is how I want to handle this. And yes, there will be people who will shy away from that, not want to cause trouble. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to move in that direction. And I think the fact that the healthcare system is like overwhelmed
Yeah.
kind of works in our favor in that
Yes.
way, that this is the time to have a revolution.
Yes. Oh, yay.
Yes, I
Your
love it.
timing is perfect.
Yeah, and I love that we're talking with you because you've given us so many different examples of
Yeah.
ways that people can stir up, change the conversation, activate their
Mm-hmm.
community, and create their own revolution, whether it's through arts or conversations or meetings in many different ways. It doesn't have to look a certain way, and there's not a program. But as you know, we're working on a workbook and a course, so you're one of the few who's had a preview of it. I don't know, what are your initial thoughts of it?
Oh, it's amazing. I cannot believe how much you packed into that workbook. Like you thought of everything because it's the interactive piece that sticks, right? When
Mm-hmm.
people read.
Mm-hmm.
And so to pause and work through some of the exercises, and I don't know where you got all those exercises. They're really amazing. And they're really appropriate. They're quite
Mm-hmm.
relevant. Like you get out of those exercises what you need, because it's easy to read the 7 keys and say, yep, got it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't worked through those keys in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what you need to prepare yourself for and what you need to know about yourself, I had a
Mm-hmm.
really funny conversation with my husband in the car when we were talking about knowing your styles, because we're completely different. Now, it didn't come to an argument, but he would be that assertive, no, I want to know everything and I'm going to go get it. I
Yeah.
would be in the middle trying to balance both sides of it. So yeah, I'm going to need him to be that guy,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
today, not where over dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was great, right? But your book prompts you to start thinking about, and it's not hard. You're not asking me to write down all of my wishes and values, because I find when you talk about advanced care planning, you talk about, well, what are your values and what are your
Yeah.
wishes? Well, I don't know. I haven't really
Yeah.
thought
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
But these exercises that you have are incredible in that they make it easy for people to come up with the information that you think they need to have thought about for each of these steps. That part of it is amazing. I can't believe how many different exercises you have. That's really incredible. And I don't know how you did it that fast.
Well, Shelley, we were so grateful that you agreed to review it and to give us feedback. And we took all your feedback
Oh, that's
because
great.
again, so you've helped write this workbook as well,
Oh,
just so
well,
you
no,
know.
that's probably pushing it a bit, but
No,
yeah,
no, it's
yeah,
true. It was so
thank you.
helpful what you said. Yeah, Sienna and I are just realizing that, the way we explain what we're doing changes over time. And at this particular time, on this day, Sienna and I agree that we're really trying to make sure that people have an in the know illness experience.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. And that they also feel like themselves through the beginning, middle, if there's an, advanced or end stage to their illness, that they don't become unrecognizable to themselves. And so how to bring their individual unique self forward so that they're not like a square peg in a round hole or whatever
Yeah.
that saying is, right?
Or that they have a
So
label on their head that says, I'm a cancer patient.
That's right.
yeah. Harvey Chochinov says it really well. He says he, trying to preserve the personhood and not just the patienthood, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And you include
anyway,
the family in that, which is
in the
really,
family,
it takes a community, right? To have,
Yeah.
get people
Yeah.
through these kind of things. So
Yeah.
you include them in that. There's a part where you talk about the caregiver and the healthcare provider and the
Mhm.
vows that you talk about in there. Like, that's really neat to
Renewing their
create that
vows.
commitment. Yeah.
No ring needed.
Shelley, it has been amazing to talk to you today. We want to end our
Yeah.
interview with a question that we don't really celebrate some of our wins very often. So I'd love to let you talk about, what are you proud of, all you've done?
What am I proud? I am very proud of bringing a community engagement lens to this work, like to
Mhm.
the work in palliative care. I think the hospices do an absolutely incredible job of caring for people who come in to the residents.
Mhm.
And what I've said to them, and they do have some community programs, like driving and day programs and things, which are all
Mhm.
amazing and so supportive, but they don't really take it further in terms of trying to engage the community to build the capacity. And what I've said to them, I said, we do great work, but we can't do it all. So
Mhm.
we need to pull the community into this, that aren't necessarily people who are right in the middle of a serious illness, but the broader community, because it's going to take all of us to
Mhm.
support everybody. So
Mhm.
it's a lonely job sometimes because it's
Yeah.
not it's not the facts or the tactical do this, do that. It's
Mhm.
more of a exploration
An art.
and and being patient with it. So yeah, I think I hope that they continue to grow and build, because there are some great hospices doing great work, but not enough of them with the funding or the staffing to be able to do more than the day-to-day.
Mhm. I think we're all would admit that we're selfish in what we're doing, right? Because we're just trying to create a better
Yeah, that's a very
situation
good way
for
to put
when
it.
we get there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm only kidding with you, but it's a good investment, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
It's a good
very much
social
so.
investment for
Yeah,
ourselves. Yeah.
yeah.
Shelley, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Always a
Thank you,
pleasure to be with
Shelley.
you too. You both are an inspiration. You have taken energy and brought it in and just kind of like blew up my balloons for me again. It was awesome.
But
Awesome to be
you've
able to
been
work with you.
a super connector for us too. So thank
I'll
you.
keep doing it.
Thank
You
you.
so much.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. Visit our website, waitingroomrevolution.com, for more information, to join our newsletter, and to check out our book, Hope for the Best, Plan for the Rest. This podcast is produced by myself, Kayla McMillan, Shilpa Jyoti Kumar, and Maggie Seebeck. And our theme music is Maypole by Ketsa.